Welcome back to the Second International Conference on Education 2022. And the theme for this year is Adaptive Education, Empowering Quality Education Through Teaching and Learning. All right, ladies and gentlemen, viewers and participants, not yet Thailand. Now we are going to move to Indonesia, Universitas Tunku Omar. So allow me to invite Assistant Prof. Dr. Firman Parlindungann. He's going to share with us on the myth and misconceptions about literacy.
Hello, Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm doing great.
Just give me 1 second. I need to.
Yeah. All right, go ahead. Just a mild reminder to all our participants and viewers. Don't forget to visit our Facebook, University College of Yayasan Pahang, and also you can get more updates on the activities of UCYP on our IG, ucyp.malaysia. All right, and please follow us. All right, on our social media. All right, Doctor?
Yes.
Are we okay? All right.
Can you hear my voice clearly?
Yes, we can hear you. So
okay, let me try to share screen first.
Sure. Okay, so I can see on screen now your slide. All right.
All right.
That's great. To you, Doctor.
Good afternoon, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for having me. It is my honor to be here. After last year, I didn't make it because my health problems, and it's the first international conference on education. But I'm glad the COVID has gone, and then we are back on the track, and here I am. So my talk today will be about the myth and misconceptions about literacy, and I think this topic is relevant to the theme of our conference. And given the fact that literacy is the basic skill we need for learning, and I really like the previous speaker talk about how we learn and what we learn matters for our education, and that our social environment is also affecting the output of our education. So I think what I'm going to talk today would be relevant to the overall topic of our discussion. So literacy, literacy is now has been the focus of our education. There's so much going on in our environment and surrounding, and I'm going to talk about some development of literacy itself and how the misconception around it has been going on so far, and yeah. So I did a little background of me. I did my PhD in reading and literacy at the Ohio State University, United States. And I am now currently a faculty member in Universitas Teguh Umar, Indonesia. It's in Aceh. So yeah, that's my phone number, WhatsApp, and also email in case you guys need it for further affiliation, of course. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, there is currently a shift in how academia or researchers view literacy. From the earlier development of literacy, people tend to view that reading is only a process that you do in your head. So it's an individual process, how one brain process text. But then now the term itself has been developed into a broader understanding of it. That reading is not only happening only in one head, but it's also happening between heads, or many heads. So when, for example, when you are situated in a classroom, you talk about text or you learn reading in a classroom. So that is the situated practice of reading, where dialogue and you talk about the text, you situate your students in a particular context to understand the text. So meaning in that classroom or in that context is not necessarily only in your head, but it's also between the conflict or the dialogue or the social interactions that you have with the text. So that's what makes literacy now has shifted in the paradigm. So literacy considers now also the social interaction or the social cultural point of view. So this is the two divide of the paradigm that I talked about earlier, from the cognitivism theory into the social cultural theory. That reading in the earlier development, reading is viewed as a stage process, meaning that it's like a stairs. You cannot reach the higher level of stairs before stepping in the first stair. So that's the stage process. And that point of view of reading is underlined in the knowledge constructions, that knowledge is constructed as a mental activity. It's what you do with your own to process something or learning something. While on the other hand, sociocultural theory uh, underpinned that learning occurs in a social interactions, just like what I explained earlier. For example, in a classroom, you not only process anything uh, with your own, but also with other people in that context. So context really affect the learning itself. And reading to that end is a transaction, yeah? To transactions between the reader, the text, and the context. So yes, this is the three people that coined or what is it? Really affecting, yeah? Really affecting the paradigm of reading as a social interaction. Maybe any of you are familiar with these three people? Yeah, the first one is Vygotsky with his theory of ZPD, yeah, zone of proximal development, and the second one is Bakhtin with his theory of dialogic discourse, and Rosenblatt, the third one, is uh, with her theory of transactional theory or reading response theory. So let's move to the first one, yeah, Vygotsky. So according to Vygotsky, learning is mediated action in which the mediational means can be a language or text. So here, to understand text, we as teachers need to provide a scaffolding. I think the first keynote speaker talked a lot about scaffolding. And scaffolding means you try to build a bridge, yeah, between what the students can learn by their own with what they are going to learn. So there is a gap between what they have known and what they haven't. So you build that bridge that as a knowledgeable others or with technology or tools or text to build that bridge. So that is the ZPD or zone of proximal development by Vygotsky. And then Bakhtin said that dialogic discourse, that meaning construction, which is dynamic and relational, that it is not merely found in the text, that their meaning resides in the interaction in which the text is used in a particular context. So the simple understanding of it is that when you read the text by your own, uh, the meaning that you get from that process would be different from the meaning that you talk about it. For example, if a Mrs. Moderator read text and then I read the same text as the Miss Moderator, my understanding of the text would be quite different when we talk about it, for examples. Yeah, so that means that meaning resides in the interactions, not only in the process or in your mind. And then Rosenblatt, the third uh, academia, yeah, expert, said that every reading act is an event, yeah, or a transaction involving a particular reader and a particular pattern of sign, a text, and occurring at a particular time in a particular context. So if you read the text now, today, for example, and then you read that text again next week, for example, uh, you might get different point of view of the text, or your understanding might be shifted after a few days, just because you talk about text or you respond to the text differently. So that's the three theory of reading that now we conceive as a literacy, and that literacy now is not only in one head, but you talk about it, or many heads might involve in understanding a text, particularly in the classroom. So, ladies and gentlemen, what often happens in our classroom right now, that in literacy class, for example, yeah, or in reading class, uh, we are we are supposed to uh, understand that a discussion or talking about the text in learning language or in learning reading itself is important. But what often happens is that many teachers avoid or prohibit students to talk about it, or not talking at all in the classroom or in the silent, and the student that the teacher censored herself or himself to talk a lot in the classroom. So that's what happened. But with this understanding, if reading really matters, if dialogue really matters, if social interactions really matters in our classroom, to talk about our daily life, to connect with the text, for example, then this shouldn't be happen, right? This shouldn't be happen in our classroom. We have to encourage more the discussion, the dialogue, or the social interaction in the classroom to understand the text. So in the US, yeah, back in 1983, the U.S. Secretary of Education published a report, yeah, called "A Nation at Risk." So back in the 80s, the U.S. has realized that there's a problem with their education. There's a problem with their reading and literacy process in the classroom. And then in 85, then the government created a commission on reading, and they published this book, yeah, Becoming a Nation of Readers. It's a synthesis of research telling people what really works in the classroom. And then they conceptualized reading back in 85 as how children learn to read, and how early stages of children's reading development, and what importance of parent-child literacy interactions during preschool years that would be beneficial for children in entering the school. So really they have this awareness in 85. Maybe we are not yet talking about reading or education at all. And yeah, so with this development, then 30 years later, yeah, or 35 years later, there's a reading and literacy shift. That reading not necessarily begin when children have sophisticated oral language or first grade. That reading began early in the children's life. For example, Goodman in 86, yeah, said that with a child, very first meaningful interactions with print as might occur when a 2-year-old child reads the label on a potato chips bag. So reading happens not necessarily in the first grade, but when children, for example, 2 years old or 3 years old, go to the supermarket and then they buy something, ice cream or potato chips, and they read the label on it. That's reading. That's what Goodman said. And then he goes with uh, uh, an explanations that children's 2-3 words combination is not a deficit. It is a sophisticated manipulations of meaning. For example, when a baby, 2 years old child, yeah, uh, said "mommy shoe," mommy shoe might not sophisticated language. It's not correct. It's not a sentence at all because the verb is missing, right? But mommy shoe, according to Goodman, is manipulations of meaning. It can be everything. Mommy shoe can be mommy, that is my shoe. Mommy, I like the shoe. Mommy, I want a new shoe. Mommy, please put on my shoe or put off my shoe, for example. So mommy shoe is manipulations of many different meanings. and that children is viewed as active participants in the constructions of their own linguistic competence is a dynamic. Yeah, this is where the sociocultural and dynamic view of reading or literacy is not necessarily as a stages process, a stage like a stairs, but it's the dynamic, it's a sociocultural. Then they come now with the understanding of learning to read. Yeah, that learning to read with a new term as emergent literacy, meaning that child initiated the process of it, and then there is important opportunity for language interaction between adults and also children, and that early social linguistic context is important. For example, at home, when you read some books or tell story with children in at home, that really important for their acquisition of language and the acquisitions of reading. So then in the US in 2000s, they gather again and they created a national reading panel. Yeah, this panel then synthesized again research to analyze what works in the classroom and how what's hot and what's not about literacy and how the instruction should be done in the classroom. And they conceptualize 5 pillars of literacy. And this is skills, yeah, that we need to teach our children at school. The first pillars is phonemic awareness, and then phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and the highest one is comprehension. So this is the 5 skills that conceptualize literacy itself. In Australia, or in many native speakers of English world, they conceptualize 8 critical aspects of literacy, or now we conceive literacy as a continuum from reading text to concept about brain. Yeah, so there's constrained skills and unconstrained skills. Constrained skills means that when you master the skills, you no longer need to develop that skills anymore. For example, when elementary school students have received instruction in concept about brains or phonemic awareness and phonics, and they master it already, and it's finished. It's not necessary to be developed anymore. But reading text, comprehensions, vocabulary, aspects of writing, and aspect of speaking are developed over time. Even now, we are as adults are still developing these unconstrained skills of literacy. So this continuum on the right is learning to read, there, meaning that when you receive the phonics, phonemic awareness, and concept about print, and the other end is reading to learn, and it's developing again and again. So phonics is related to consonants, vowels, onset and rhymes, syllabications and accent, and then so it's really sounds to letter links, yeah, or spelling, structural analysis, and level books might help children to master these skills. Well, phonemic awareness is also a bigger term of the phonics. So it's related to syllables, onset, and rhyme. But concept about print is orientations, yeah. It's about size, it's about shapes of the letters, and then scanning orders, where to start, where do I go, for example. Look at this print, yeah. If you have concept about print of this language, I think on the left is Japanese, in the middle is Somali, and on the right is Hebrew. If you have concept about print in this language, then you can read and you know where do I start, which way do I go, for example. But if you don't have the working system, the concept about print, then you might not be able to read the text or know where do I start, for example. Yeah. So it's really concept about print matters, especially for children. Yeah. For example, this one, still concept about print. Yeah. Can anyone read the text? What language do you think it is? Mrs. Moderator, maybe? Do you know what language is this? Can you read it?
Well, yeah. It could it be Arabic? I mean,
It looks like Arabic, but it's not, right? Yeah,
that's very tricky.
yeah. We have the concept but print of Arabic, and it looks like Arabic, but it's not Arabic. It's Somali. Can you recognize which part is mistaken in this or error in this part?
At the left side,
The left side.
it looks like upside down. The last sentence.
The last sentence, yes, because you have this Arabic concept but print, and then you can recognize the error, right? But you cannot read. You cannot read the sentence, can you? No, because it's not Arabic. So the words looks like Arabic, meaning that you have a little concept but print of it, but it's not Arabic, so you cannot read it. It's Somali, and I cannot read. Also, it's confusing, yeah, for us because we don't have the concept board print, and that's what how concept board print is important, especially when children learn to read in whatever language you are teaching. So, for example, in writing, there's also concept about print. Yeah, if you look at the top part of the picture here, it's actually the name of the students. So I took the picture when I did my dissertations back in the US. So here in the left, the name of the students actually is Bailey. On the right is Michael, right? But Bailey put the EY on the top of BA, meaning that, for example, his concept about print might be still confusing, and you need to work on it. But Michael here can measure the space and how to write his name properly based on the space. So that's concept about print is also important in writing. So here is another examples why concept about print and how you are learning to master it. The left and the right is different, right? Yeah, it's the same students but in different time and space. After a couple of weeks, we work on writing, and then I ask the students to write again, still the same book, but the progress really impressive. Yeah, the progress really impressive with proper instruction, of course. So let's discuss now hopefully we have enough time to cover 9 issues here in what I mean by misconceptions. You can use the chat box, for example, to answer the questions. What do you think? Do you agree or not agree with this statement? So the first one is learning to read is a natural process. You guys agree or disagree with this statement? Please go ahead, put your opinion in the chat box. You can mention agree or disagree that learning to read is a natural process. What do you think, Miss Moderator? It is a natural process?
Yeah, or is a nurtured process.
It is a natural process. Do you think?
Yeah, well, it can be nurtured.
It can be natural, yeah.
Yeah, it can be nurtured, natural versus nurtured.
Yeah. So no, yeah. So reading is not a natural process, meaning that it is a very complex process, and you need to learn reading explicitly and directly. Yeah, and that indicates also what we should do as teachers in the classroom, that students do not learn reading in English just because they are in an English environment, for example. Yeah, in Japan, for example, our first keynote speakers mentions that Japan is not an English country, and there is so many low-level proficiency students in English. So meaning that Although you set up the classroom with all English environment, but then students do not learn English just because those environment. So reading really is requires longer learning and practice time, and students need direct and explicit instructions to learn reading. For example, earlier with concept about print, you need to explicitly mentions to the students that you need to start reading from this side and go this way and go this way, for example. And then you need to differentiate between P and B, P and B, for example, yeah, with the capital letters of P and B is different, and so on and so on. So various strategies and language sources need to be mastered. So it's not a natural process. The second statement, students who are fluent in English reading also understand what they are reading. Agree or disagree?
Disagree.
Disagree. Yeah, it's obvious. Yeah. So disagree that students can be fluent in reading but not always understand the reading. Remember my previous slide about the reading panel in 2000 in the US. They conceptualized five uh, pillars of literacy or five skills of literacy, and the highest one is comprehension, meaning that that's the hardest or the top one. That comprehension is really uh, not easy, yeah, for everyone. So there are two levels of reading, literal and higher level. And higher level is the the, the highest one, meaning that in PISA, for example, PISA assessment, if you are familiar with PISA, there are three levels. There are three levels of cognitive or cognitive process. The first one is retrieve information. The second one is understanding or comprehension, and the top one is reflection. So reflection really is the highest because after you comprehend text, you need to reflect with your own experience and build your knowledge based on that comprehension. And reflection is not easy. And that students need direct and explicit instruction of strategies to understand text based on the purpose of reading. So if you are doing extensive reading, for example, you are learning, you are reading for pleasure, your point of view or your understanding might be different when you are doing intensive reading in a classroom, meaning that you are reading for learning something. So the purpose is different, and your strategies to understand the text are also different. So comprehension is lifelong problems. Yeah, I myself still have problems with comprehension, especially when I read journal articles. Yeah. Okay, the third statement. Students can master reading when the time comes. At the right time, they can catch up. What do you think?
I'm not sure about this.
You're not sure about that? Okay.
Uh-huh.
So time really matters here, but it's it's a misconception, yeah. So teachers do not wait for students to be ready, and I think that's the debate whether you are teaching reading in kindergarten before entering the elementary schools, or should the elementary school teachers who teach reading. So there's a debate in our society, I think, around that. But the ideal conception of it is should be that teachers do not wait for students to be ready. So whoever come to your classroom, you should be ready for them, not the students ready for you, but you should be ready for the students. And whatever language they bring from home, whatever tools, whatever they have learned from home are important. It's not a deficit. It's a tool for you then to consider what should be doing in the classroom. So remember about zone of proximal development, what the students have mastered and what they are going to learn. We need to build the scaffolding between those two with that idea, I think that teachers do not wait for students to be ready. And then there is this statement: if you are waiting for the students to be ready, there is this idea or what is it? A notion, yeah, in the research called Matthew effect. So Matthew effect comes from the Bible term, yeah, Matthew, the verse of Matthew. It says that the rich gets richer, the poor gets poorer. So when you are waiting for your students to be ready for your classroom, then those who cannot read, they will be again and again in double burdens of those waiting. But if you provide proper instruction or suitable instruction for them, then those who cannot read can level up, yeah, can catch up with other students who are proficient, who are more proficient than them. Okay, now the fourth statement. The main factor that affects students in reading is home environment. The main factor that affects students.
Not necessarily.
Not
Not
necessarily.
necessarily.
Yeah.
All right. Dr.
It is
Firman,
one-
I'm
yes.
sorry to interrupt you, but we need to speed up a bit. We have like 2 minutes more to go.
Okay, yeah, sure. So yeah, there's this difficulty in reading, yeah, due to the lack of vocabulary, but do not master the basics and low exposures to book or the main factors, so not home environment. Again, we need direct and explicit instruction of it. And the fifth statement, there will be some students who cannot read whatever the method you use, no matter what. This is incorrect, yeah. Of course, there are individual differences in our classroom, but again, with direct and explicit instruction is important, yeah. And students can catch up with whatever you are providing for them in the classroom. And the next one, failure in mastering reading is due to intellectual disability. Yeah. So there are some euphoria in our society now. If your child cannot read in 2 years old or 3 years old, then they are identified as having intellectual disability or and so on. Yeah. But if not, reading difficulty is different, but not necessarily disability. The next one is reading program can use whatever books and text. What do you think, Miss Moderator?
Well, wow, it's tricky, but I'm sure not true.
Not true, yes, not true. Yeah, you need to consider interest, difficulty level, and choice of the student. So you cannot use whatever books and text. No, of course, yeah. And the last one, literacy is not only about reading and writing. What do you think?
You should answer this.
Yeah, it's correct. Yeah. So literacy is not only about reading and writing. Yeah. It's multimodal text. When you are, or your students watching YouTube, for example, that's also reading. When your students reading newspaper or talking about it and then presenting it, viewing, and etc. and etc. That's also literacy. So literacy is multimodal, and literacy consider reading, writing, listening, speaking, viewing, and presenting. I think that would be all my presentations. And of course, you need literacy strategies, yeah, across content areas. That's another continuum. So reading to learn. So you're not only learning to read, but also you need to reading to learn, yeah, of the students. Thank you very much. I hope that would contribute to our discussions today. If any questions, I would be happy to answer. Thank you.
Great. I love the 9 myths and misconceptions about literacy, Dr. Firman. Thank you. It's very interesting presentation. We also have questions. I suppose if it's not in the chat box, I'm going to read it for you. I mean, we talked about the roles of parents. I mean, parents can also facilitate the children at home. So how can parents facilitate the love of learning and reading at home?
Yes, that's a very interesting question, because parents are the first adult, yeah, or the first knowledgeable others. Vygotsky said knowledgeable others that our students get from their childhood, yeah. So parents really the knowledgeable others or the first adult that will affect the reading and writing or literacy of the students. So what parents can do at home matters, yeah, for learning and for literacy acquisition. For example, by providing literacy-rich environment. I mentioned earlier that literacy-rich environment is important, but it's not the main factor. So meaning that if you buy many books, posters, and you set up your child bedroom with literacy-rich environment, and you are doing nothing with it, it's not uh, it's not yet enough, yeah, for children. You need to have these interactions with the books, with the posters, with everything that you provide for your students at home or your child at home. For example, by having bedtime stories or shared reading or discussion about reading. And what's more important is that you model the reading. Oftentimes, parents ask the children to read text, buy many books, but the parents themselves do not read. So that really matters for the children. How can I read? How can I love books? How can I have this love of reading if my parents do not model, if they are not doing the reading? So really modeling of how you read, how you hold books, how you treat books or text properly to understand them matters, yeah? And it starts from parents. Hope that answered the question.
Yeah, very much. There's one question in the chat box. What's
Okay.
your view regarding Montessori idea, which kids have their own sensitive period? Means kids will learn when they reach sensitive period and we do not force them to learn.
Yes. So yeah, this is I think is the debate, yeah, in the academia and the research about again. I would agree with this Montessori idea if I view reading and literacy from the cognitivism point of view, meaning that children can read in the what is it, golden period, and there is a time, a specific time or sensitive period here you mentioned about it, and you wait for them to reach that period. But from sociocultural theory or sociocultural paradigm, you do not wait, meaning that you do not force. Of course, there's no force here to students to master everything at that age, but we can appropriate, we can choose whatever works for those students at those time, at a specific context, right? For example, if you are having a 2 years old child or 3 years old child, uh, of course, you do not force them to read a complex text, but you can provide level books or decodable text for them, which only contain a few sentences, right? Or you provide text that have more pictures than the text to help them love of reading. But yes, so appropriate instruction matters in that point of view, not necessarily waiting for a golden period to start something with the students. I think that is my answer.
Thank you so much to Assistant Professor Dr. Firman Parlindungann from Universitas Tengku Omar Aceh, Indonesia. It's a very interesting presentation. Thank you for sharing.